So when I finally got diagnosed at 34 by a Lyme literate doctor who's an osteopath, right? So I thought I was going to go the more natural route. No. He threw so many different antibiotics, anti-malarial drugs at me. I thought I was going to die.
Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. And today we've got Heather Gray on the show. She's the renegade boss, and she's going to be talking about unmasking Lyme and autoimmune triggers. And we're going to talk about mainly trauma and toxins. And so this is a really good show because I think people don't realize how many people have Lyme and how many people are dealing with trauma at the root cause of their health issues. And also, we talk about some of the uncommonly talked about autoimmune triggers as well. Just put that all together. So it's a really, really interesting show today. My guest, Heather Gray, she's a functional diagnostic nutritionist and a bioenergetic practitioner. We talk a lot about bioenergetics on the show today. And she specializes in supporting clients with chronic and complex illnesses such as Lyme, mold toxicity, and autoimmune. And with over 32 years of personal experience, she understands the struggles of living with these conditions and is dedicated to helping others find relief. So her personalized approach as a practitioner, a podcast host, and an author has helped countless clients reduce inflammation in the body and brain and improve gut health and achieve optimal wellness. Heather, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into health.
Yeah, I usually start off the same way by telling people I was just born basically full of shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how many practitioners, how many parents can resonate with, young kids being constipated. I was 4 years old and sitting on a potty for so long that my feet would fall asleep. That kind of started my, let's throw Band-Aids at symptoms, right? Let's throw nasty thick oils down her throat and give her still softeners. But nobody was trying to figure out why this 4-year-old couldn't poop.
Wow.
Hindsight's 2020. That was the year my uncle committed suicide. My grandmother died of breast cancer, and I was being raised by alcoholic addicts. So needless to say, the childhood trauma that, ensued around that time, I'm pretty sure kicked off my celiac genetic autoimmune issue. And I was eating SAD, right? A standard American diet at the time. So, it was kind of the start of all my stuff. Cause it's sad because I'm known for Lyme. And so many people think it's just cause and effect. I got bit by a tick and I got Lyme disease. And I'm always like, no, that's not how it works. Same thing with a lot of autoimmune and Alzheimer's, right? It's something that's actually been in play for years, decades sometimes, that they're setting yourself up to be a good host. So had my stuff at 4 and then, being raised by alcoholic addicts. And then by the time I was a teenager, my mom divorced my dad for his brother. That's actually a bit in my comedy, right? Like who else out there has sister cousins? Some more trauma. And it just made me a perfect host. So by the time I did get bit by a tick when I was 13, like I said, I was just perfect storm and developed symptoms 2 years later with my first step in a psych ward for a suicide attempt. And so that was kind of the whole start of things. But I didn't get diagnosed for 27 years total, was undiagnosed Lyme, mold, 3 autoimmune diseases, cavitations. And it was like 34 when I finally got diagnosed. And then that's when I became a functional practitioner. So it was, obviously a pain to purpose story.
Yes. Yeah. And, so many people are in the health field because of their traumas and their health issues, et cetera, and here to serve and help other people. And, and I have a really interesting take on Lyme. I mean, I think everyone has Lyme. Everyone has bitten by bugs, mosquitoes, ticks, and things like that. But it's just certain people based on their stressors and traumas or lack of love in their life develop symptoms.
Oh, absolutely. And their genetics, like I have got some of the worst genetics out there for, people talk about having a detox bucket. I've got a detox thimble. I don't produce, store, or make vitamin D well at all. So all 3 of my pathways for vitamin D suck, which are like foundational for so many health things in your body, things to work in your body. So no, absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. And it's been around for thousands of years. People have gotten into this weird conspiracy. There might be some conspiracy to it. We might have done something to it to make it more virulent. Yes. But we also know that bacteria has been around for thousands of years and we have coexisted with this for a really long time. And if your immune system is doing its job properly, it typically will keep Lyme in its place because it knows how to.
It's just like cancer. We all have 100 million cancer cells in our body, and it's only when traumas or the immune system is overwhelmed that it is allowed to grow. And so it's kind of the similar concept.
110%. And that's why I get so frustrated, especially with even like Lyme literate doctors. God bless them that they know a little bit more about the disease, but a lot of them are still just focused on kill, 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 kill. And I think that's why I fell in love with you and your work early on, is because I was like, detoxing, holy crap, what a difference it made in my life, detoxing. Yeah, I still. So when I finally got diagnosed at 34 by a Lyme literate doctor, who's an osteopath, right? So I thought I was going to go the more natural route. No. He threw so many different antibiotics, anti-malarial drugs at me. I thought I was going to die. It was horrific. Never once did he ask me if I was pooping. Never once did he ask me how I was sleeping. Never once did he ask me what my diet or my stress level was like. And at the time I was in a horrible marriage, married to an alcoholic, raising a kid with celiac disease. And back then we didn't really know a whole lot about that. And there wasn't a whole lot of gluten-free options. So there was a lot of stress in my life. And you can't go to war at somebody's body like that's been sick for decades and expect them to come out of it okay. But it was, when I found detoxing, man, it was like somebody turned the light back on in my brain, my body, like things started working again. It's incredible.
When I said before that everybody has Lyme, I think maybe not everybody, but the majority of people have Lyme. So I just wanted to state that. But yeah, I do believe that when it comes to heavy metal detoxification, you need to do that to get rid of Lyme. You've got to get rid of all the heavy metals and chemicals that are interfering in your immune system function so it can come back online. But also trauma plays a huge, huge role in draining our energy, draining our resources, causing a lot of physical health issues with our immunity and things like that. So what's the role of trauma in Lyme disease and other health issues?
I think it's like the number one thing people need to focus on first. And it's usually, if it ever gets looked at all, it's usually last because, emotions, I was one, right? So here I am. I became a functional practitioner after thinking that Western med was going to kill me. And even the functional way, it's diet, it's lifestyle, it's all these things. But, I took my pills, my supplements, and I ate my good diet, and I made sure I was in bed by 10. Like I did all the functional things and never once addressed the suicide of my uncle, the 2 suicide attempts of myself, being in mold off and on for 10 years, having a chronic disease. Like there are so many things that were stuck in my nervous system, constant fight or flight, right? I had the worst startle reaction of anybody I know. Like I would be standing upstairs cooking, and if my back was turned towards the doorway, right, my husband comes up the stairs, what? And I throw what's ever in my hand. I jump 10 feet. I scare the crap out of him, and then I cuss at him because now my veins are just coursing with this adrenaline. It's like poison. And then I get really angry for a little bit, and it makes me sick. And he was like, I don't think that response is normal. I'm like, really? Are you sure? And I had to think about it. I don't see other people getting startled who act that way. So if you've got an exaggerated startle response, that's a pretty good indicator that that your nervous system is dysregulated, right? You're stuck in that fight or flight, and we can't heal when we're fight or flight. We don't digest when we're in fight or flight. We don't have a sex drive when we're in fight or flight. We're just trying to get away from that damn tiger, So it's absolutely, like I said, that little piece of the trauma that I gave you, that was just a little thumbnail, like 10 times more worse than that. I'm still shocked at some of the stuff that I've made through it, and with a decent, healthy attitude and sense of humor intact, thank God. But it's absolutely crucial. So I kept relapsing, right? So I would clean myself up the functional way. 3-6 months, I'd go by, I'd feel awesome. And then I'd relapse, and then I'd relapse. And after about the 4th relapse, is right around 2020, I finally asked, I was like, what am I missing? And then that's when I read the book, The Body Keeps Score, right? So ridiculously triggering. Like I'm reading it on my couch and I'm like ugly crying. I'm like, my husband's like, what the hell are you reading? I'm like, this little girl and her dad. He's like, no, I don't want to hear it. But it was the first time I had ever heard that these big T's, little T's, getting stuck in the nervous system. And he talked about like neurofeedback and, plant medicine and all these different things other than talk therapy, because we're starting to find out now that talk therapy can actually keep somebody triggered, kind of keep somebody stuck in that fight or flight.
Yeah, and it never addresses the underlying root cause.
No.
Those frequencies of those traumas in our energy field, that doesn't touch those, or the unconscious trauma that we're not even really aware of, or how things affected us. You can only talk about what you're consciously aware of.
Absolutely. And just like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, quite often about the chemicals that are produced when we're thinking about some of these, stressed states and how addictive they can be. So sometimes, you go into your therapist and you're talking and you're getting those, nice addictive chemicals again, and then you're getting validation, from your therapist. And it's just this like vicious loop. It really didn't do any, much for me. But then like 2 weeks after reading the book, I'm like literally doing an ayahuasca journey in Boulder, Colorado. Like I just jumped in both feet, like, here we go. And since then I've done a lot of different types of plant medicine and neurofeedback and somatic experiencing work, breath work, bioenergetics, right? Constantly. That is my number one thing I focus, well, besides detox, is making sure that my nervous system is calm, because nothing happens in that excited state unless I need to run from a tiger, which is never going to happen. So, my creative juices don't flow. I can't be a loving mother. I can't be a loving partner. I can't be an awesome practitioner. Like none of that stuff happens if I'm, all the time.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize how stressed they are. I mean, even when you're really highly aware of your nervous system and your stress levels and this and that, you can still get dysregulated. It's just, we just have so many stressors coming at us from every angle. And even with awareness about it, it's still challenging to maintain that kind of even keel.
It was shocking when I did Dr. Amy Apigian's 22-day course, Biology of Trauma, and she was teaching somatic experiencing work. And one of them was this, what was it called? It was basically teaching you how to regulate and sense and learn about your own nervous system. Because again, if like you're a fish in water, you don't realize you're in water. It's kind of like the same thing when you've been so stressed out for so long. That's the only state that you know until you get out of it. And then the first time I was out of it was like, whoa, that's what this is supposed to feel like. Like, then that started becoming addicting, right? Because the sense of calm, the sense of safety, the sense of, things that I've never experienced in my life, not with the people who brought me up, not with my ex-husband who was the alcoholic. Like I've never experienced safety in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until going through those courses and learning how my nervous system worked, what I could do, what it feels like to come down a few notches. Acupuncture also helps with that, meditation now, breath work. And so I can tell. And it's funny because there's a big stressor that happened a couple months ago, and my startle response came back. And so it was like, oh, note to self, I need to spend more time relaxing. I need to spend more time with breath work and meditation and all these things. And it was amazing how much different my life kind of shifted after I started focusing on that again, because, we get busy and sometimes it's hard to do all the to-do things. And as sick as I have been for as long as I've been, there's always like this, I have this expression that I say that my self-care feels like a part-time job, and it's better than being full-time sick.
Yeah. I feel like it's a full-time job.
I know.
Like I work 2 jobs. I do this podcast and run my website. My other full-time job is my health. It takes a lot of time.
I didn't want to discourage people, so that's why I say part-time job. But no, like if you're being real, that's part of the reason why being an entrepreneur is so awesome for those of us with chronic illnesses, because it's gives us the flexibility to really take care of ourselves the way that we're supposed to.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com. Yeah, I'm always multitasking. I'm doing one thing. I'm at my feet in my foot bath, or I'm in the sauna doing social media, or I'm, doing my Rife, or I'm on my computer. So I'm able to multitask doing a lot of things. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that are really stressed out, they actually get addicted to these stress chemicals, so the adrenaline and the epinephrine and the cortisol, et cetera, because that's how they keep going. That's how they just get up and get to their day. And I think a lot of people, once they kind of, calm down, they just feel tired and they don't like that. I think there's something to that too. But let's talk about trauma and autoimmune. So autoimmunity is the fastest subset of diseases growing the fastest. So what is that connection between trauma and autoimmune disease?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of like the chicken or the egg. A lot of people are like, was it the trauma that contributed to the autoimmune, or was it kind of autoimmune that contributed to trauma? They're both definitely related. And autoimmune, if you think about it, it's the body turning against itself. So trauma just leads to heightened nervous system dysregulation, higher cortisol, uh, you know, dysregulation in your immune system. And so just sets you up again to be that perfect host, right? For all the different things that come along, whether it turns on your celiac gene or even your celiac gluten sensitivity gene. And then now you've got that turned on because of the trauma, because of the stress. And it can be, like I said, anywhere from heavy metals to parasites to early childhood trauma, divorce, PTSD from the war. Any of those things kind of acts the same in your nervous system. And so you now have this trigger, right? So like I did, it triggered my autoimmune, turned it on, turn that on. And so then now whatever I'm eating is being reactive to. And then now you get that cross reactivity, right? That a lot of times wheat looks like thyroid. And that's why a lot of people with Hashimoto's, I'm like, we really shouldn't be eating wheat and grains because of the cross reactivity. So it's this kind of spiral thing. And the sad part is like when you're usually more susceptible for one, then you get another and then you get another. I'm like finding, by the time I was said and done with it, I had like 3 autoimmune diseases. I was like collecting them like trading cards.
And so what's the connection to autoimmune and other toxins? And so we know that heavy metals and chemicals interfere in our immune functioning. So what's going on there?
So yeah, I mean, a big one right now is we're finding out that a lot of heavy metals are like taking the place for insulin receptors and other mineral receptors, which then kind of leads you more towards diabetes or so they compete for resources, they cause inflammation, they can turn on the toxicity of it and the stress of it all. Epigenetics can then turn on certain genes, so it's all very connected. And like I said, people with Lyme disease, I don't think I've met one person with Lyme. It's never just Lyme. It's never just Lyme. They usually have Lyme, some sort of co-infection, some sort of heavy metals, some sort of autoimmune, right? By the time I was done, it was endometriosis, Hashimoto's, celiac disease, Lyme, 3 co-infections, right? Plus a bunch of heavy metals, mercury I had to get out, cavitations. So they're all intertwined, kind of playing off of each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that have this complex chronic illness, and I have so much compassion for people that are dealing with this and that are going to their conventional doctor and getting the revolving door, or even going to a functional doctor and just really not getting the root of what's going on with them or what order they need to be doing things in, and it can feel really, really hopeless. I think that's why a lot of practitioners, even myself, go into help, because you spend so much time researching and so much time on Dr. Google and trying different things. You're like, well, I might as well tell people what I'm learning. And that's really what my case was, is trying to figure out, well, what this puzzle is just really, it's so crazy to try to figure out.
I've always been drawn to natural type remedies. Like, well, after my second stint in the psych ward when I was 18 or 19, and looking up, herbs and supplements that help the brain, neurotransmitters, I only had one piece to that puzzle, unfortunately. I would then go take those lovely herbs and then go eat McDonald's and smoke my cigarettes and stay up too late at night and wonder why those supplements weren't helping me, right? That's a lot of problem. You talked about the root cause with a lot of functional practitioners, even still. Like I went to an acupuncturist once, $300 worth of supplements. There you go. Again, not talking about diet, not talking about sleep or stress or, getting more down. Oh, look, you have mercury in your mouth, any of that stuff. So, just because they are functional, sadly, they don't always have the answers either. So, if you've got somebody who's trying to just buy this bottle of stuff, I would run, because you're just going to end up with really expensive pee if you're not kind of addressing the whole body.
Yeah. And it's a lot to unpack, all these differences, but it's okay. You have time. I think people have spent many, many years, on the revolving door at the doctor's office and maybe have gotten help here and there, gotten some pieces of the puzzle. But you have time to figure all this stuff out. So what are your steps? Like, what do you recommend to people if they have Lyme, they have autoimmune, like what is the first step people should take?
Absolutely. That's a lot of the FDN way is the, what do they call it? The dress for success model, right? Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. And notice how supplementation is the last S, right? Because you can't supplement your way out of a bad diet. You can't supplement your way out of, bad sleep. So dialing in a lot of those foundational things, and a lot of those things are free too, like making sure you're getting enough time outdoors and getting your feet on the earth, and a lot of the detoxing principles that you teach, because like I said, a lot of folks with the chronic illness have got a lot of the similar genetics that I do, and they're just not detoxing properly, especially when it comes to mold. I can get into a moldy building and my immune system doesn't tag it for expulsion like it's supposed to. So it just circulates, recirculates. So most definitely. And starting with mindset, like I have folks, part of the prereq is to read Dr. Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, because it just even says it in the title, right? And they have to hear it from somebody else other than me for some reason. So, if you hear multiple angles from multiple people, then it starts to sink in, because a lot of this is new information for folks, right? A lot of them weren't taught that cause and effect, what you eat matters, what you think matters, right? What water you drink matters, like getting enough sleep matters, so if they're hearing it for the first time, sometimes you kind of need reinforcements. And that's why I
Yeah.
like, having them read certain things like that, or do other people's courses, or, introduce them to, your type of work, just to, have reinforcements of like, see, I'm not crazy. There's some validity behind this.
Yeah, I agree with you with the mindset. I don't think people realize how powerful what you say, what you think, and what you write are. People don't realize you have to flip the script. If you're like, I'm sick, I'm never going to get better. The statistics are against me, or, Lyme, I'm never going to get better, or whatever the fear statements are, or I have an anxiety disorder, or whatever the case may be. If you're constantly telling yourself that, like, you're right, but if you flip that script, like, thank you so much, God, for, showing me the way to get better, or whatever you say to yourself, or could say to yourself, it's incredibly powerful to change that mindset to a healing mindset, or meditate while you're saying positive statements to yourself. Your cells are listening and receptive.
Yeah, it was funny. I didn't even realize still how badly, like I said, I grew up not a nice thing said to me. And so it took a lot of time to learn how to speak nice to myself, right? It was, and it pointed out the best. I was saying something about myself, and my husband now goes, stop talking to my wife that way. And he like stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh shit. I was talking to myself in a way that I wouldn't talk to like my worst enemy. Right. And really, a lot of these things that you can do to start healing are free, and you can put in practice today. And it's, it starts with awareness, catching those thoughts and shifting it. And it takes time. Like, oh my gosh, that was probably some of the hardest things to change, I think, was my language around how I spoke about myself and even others. I felt like I had to like police almost every single thought in my head at one point. But it does get easier. And then now it's second nature. Like, I hear other people when they say things about themselves, and it like makes me cringe, because it's just like, no, don't talk about yourself like that. Don't talk to my friend up that way. So no, it's huge. And then it is sad. So people with Lyme, if you look up the word gaslit in the dictionary, I think it really should have a picture of a Lyme patient, because I think originally that's, we're the original people who have been gaslit. And so when they finally get their diagnosis and they get that validation, right, that there is something wrong with me, and then sadly I find they start to wear that like a cloak, like, of honor, and you can't heal if you are identifying with your disease in that way, right?
Yeah. And I agree with you that it does take a long time to learn to be kind to yourself and speak to yourself better. And for me, I guess having a spiritual practice and kind of surrendering to that also really helped. And, this living in gratitude and constantly telling myself how thankful I am for whatever it is that I have, just being so thankful for everything. And you can create a practice of gratitude and a practice of kindness to yourself and words of affirmation to yourself. And it's just incredibly powerful doing that. So let's talk about like any other things that you recommend to people. So we talked about, foundational things, the things that everyone's trying, when they first start improving their health, their diet, their supplements, their sleep, and what are some other things maybe like that next level that people need to work on when they have Lyme?
One, not focusing on treatment is like number 1A. Two, staying away from a lot of the Facebook groups and the Lyme groups that are just staying sick is another one. I walked into one time in the very beginning of my journey, and I felt so dirty when I left there because it was just so toxic and everybody was just kind of feeding off of that toxicity. Don't go there. Focus on something that you can focus on the good stuff in life instead of everything that's wrong. Be something like breath work. Like I remember when I first found breath work a couple years ago, and so sarcasm was another one that I had to really work on getting rid of, right? I prided myself of being like the queen of sarcasm. Sarcasm is another like kind of low form, not a loving language, right? And so, a couple years ago, and I was like, breath work, shit, I breathe every day. If it works, why am I not better? Like breath work, you freaking hippies. Until like the first time I actually sat in ceremony and was just like blown away at the power of different types of breath work. And so, like I said, most folks that I work with are stuck in fight or flight and their digestion's not working. So one of the easy little low-hanging fruits that I have them do is before a meal, I want them to do box breathing, 4 sets of a box breathing, because that'll help get them out of fight or flight and into rest and digest, and it helps set their body up for better digestion. And some typically like that is easy to remember. Oh, before I eat, I do some breath work, so 3 times a day. Now you're doing breath work for a minute. That's literally all it takes. You just got to get started, and these small little habits start feeding on another one, on another one, on another one. And the next thing you know, like I said, you've got quite the healthy habit stack going on, So also taking things in stride. Sometimes people can get so wickedly overwhelmed, especially when we're talking about like toxins, right? And I'm like, you need to take it out of your personal care products and out of the fragrance, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, I'm like, no, once a month. Do one thing once a month. And then by the time that year is done, your whole house will be changed, right? Your whole regimen will be changed. Don't try to take it all at once. The little type A personality that I am, recovering, was like, rip the Band-Aid off, let's do everything all at once. And then that short-circuited my nervous system again and also led to another relapse, so small steps add up to big wins.
So this episode is brought to you by Chef's Foundry. They've got a fantastic line of cookware called P600. It's totally non-toxic. I think people don't realize that when they're cooking, most people's cookware is adding toxins to their healthy food, that people spend so much money on healthy organic food and then cook it in toxic cookware. And so that includes cast iron, which I do not recommend. It adds way too much iron in a form that we can't absorb. People use aluminum cookware, which is very inexpensive, and it's used at most restaurants, giving us tons of aluminum. People are also using ceramic cookware, which can leach toxins into your food. And not to mention the nonstick cookware. It just has so many PFAS or PFAS that is so toxic. It's one of the forever chemicals. So you really have to pay attention to what you're cooking in. So that's why I recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry, so that you can have peace of mind when you're cooking and you're not getting any nasty chemicals like lead or cadmium or nickel or PFAS in your healthy food. You can get a special discount for my listeners by going to bit.ly/Myers Detox. So that's bit.ly/Myers Detox, MYERS DETOX, to get an exclusive discount just for my listeners. I want you to be thinking about what you're cooking your food in, and I highly recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry. I have this software that's like really amazing software. It's called Chief Fractal Software, and it tests your heart rate variability. And I was super surprised when I tested a baseline test and saw my heart rate and whatnot, my heart rate variability, and then did a bunch of breathing exercises by a breathing master, Givenchy, and then tested afterwards. And it was incredible how much my HRV had improved in such a short period of time, how my chakras improved, on all these different parameters. This software tests like 34 different parameters, majority of which were improved after deep breathing for 15 minutes. I was completely shocked because I knew that breathing, it's obviously good for you. Deep breathing is great and feel great after yoga and, other breathing exercises. But I didn't realize how much of an impact it could really have. I was shocked. And I know a lot about breathing and different healing modalities, but it really blew me away. It's really, really important to add that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because in my human design, which is like a, kind of astrology, personality profiling on steroids, there's a certain gate that's not connected for me. And a way to move emotions and to move energy is actually through breath of fire. So it's this really intense, fast way of breathing that you normally typically would never breathe that way. But when I started, oh my God, like it, again, the lights came back on in the brain, like I had energy, my creative juices started flowing, I wasn't as reactive because I was moving through stuff in my body. Breath is so ridiculously powerful. Like I said, I'm such a geek now. Went to Dave Asprey's last biohacking conference and got invited to this 4-hour breathwork meditation dance party. I was like, yeah. I mean, no drugs, no alcohol, and just you get blasted off to some amazing places. You get back to your heart, you get back in connection with other human beings, and that's really where a lot of the magic lies of healing. This whole lifestyle is just not conducive to human health. And so if you are on a healing journey and you feel isolated, and it feels hard, it's because you're going against the grain. And so pat yourself on the back. You're doing the right thing for yourself and continue to look for your tribe. It's out there. You'll find it. But just to not give up because it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, connection is so important. I think that our society is really set up for separation, and so many people are just addicted to their social media and porn, and they're not motivated to go out and find relationships or mates and, on Tinder and doing just, hooking up
Healing is hard.
culture. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, it in just politics, all these different things just made to separate us and polarize us and whatnot. And you really have to fight against that to really discover the love and the connection and the gratitude and the things it's ever present, but you have to tap into that. You have to work and tap into that.
Absolutely, 100%. Because it's not the norm. It's not what we've been taught. So if this all feels like work, that's why. It's because if nothing changes, nothing changes. You've
Yeah.
got to, yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us about you have a course called the Foundations of Health. Tell us about that because you obviously, a lot about, working on there's a lot of different facets of our health. There's a lot of different rabbit holes to go down. There's certainly a lot of mistakes that people make along the way. So tell us how you kind of, focus people on what they're supposed to be doing for their health.
So it is that whole dress for success model, right? Each little module, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction. And with each one, there's some breath work and somatic experiencing exercises in each one and an explanation of why. I have a bonus video on toxins. I have a 8-video cooking series, right? Real cooking for real life, because I found that was a huge problem when I tell people you need to start eating real food. And they're like, you mean in the kitchen? Like they literally have never stepped foot in the kitchen. They don't know how to cook. And I was like, oh crap, here we go. So, I made this very simple, cooking series, not just what to cook, but why. So talking a lot about the toxins in like forever chemicals of freaking Teflon and why you shouldn't cook with Teflon, why you shouldn't store stuff in Ziploc baggies, why you should eat grass-fed beef over confinement beef, all the different things. So it's so much more than just cooking and cooking for flavor. And don't get me wrong, you can cook amazing, healthy stuff that tastes delicious. When I tell people that I'm, paleo for the most part, and they're like, oh my God, no grains, no dairy, no wheat, no corn. What do you eat? And I'm like, let me show you. Like, I eat awesome food all the time.
Yeah, I'm paleo with Parmesan. So
nice. I wish I could do dairy. Oh my God, do I wish I could do dairy? Even raw dairy I've tried. It's my genetics. I can't process it. Yeah. Me and my husband, we were out somewhere and they had some raw dairy and we just thought we would try it out. Oh my God, the gas was horrific, both of us. And I was like, okay, that just tells me that no, we're still not meant to have dairy. So that's not a thing, right? Like no matter how common a symptom may be, it is never normal. It is always your body's check engine light coming on saying, hey, dummy, there's something going on here. And that's one of them, stinky, flatulent gas, right? Gas is a normal part of the human being, but stinky flatulence is not. That's a sign that you've got some issues going on in your gut, So instead of grabbing a Gas X, I literally used to have a package of Gas X in my purse,
I
in
did
the
too.
locker at
Yeah.
school, and in my car. Like I was always never 2 feet away from a Gas X because I was undiagnosed celiac and constipated for so long. I didn't know. I thought that was, and you see commercials, right, of all these people, so you just assume that that's how you're supposed to be. No, it's not how you're supposed to be.
Yeah, sometimes I still try to tell myself like, oh, isn't that my gut bacteria feeding on these nutrients and oligosaccharides, and they just produce gas as a byproduct? I still try to rationalize to myself that I'm just feeding my gut bugs.
Yes.
Yeah, and so if everyone wants to try out Heather's Foundations of Health course, you can get $200 off by using code Wendy. And tell us what your website is and where people can learn more about you. They can work with you as well, correct?
I'm not taking a whole lot of one-on-one clients right now. That's why I have the course. I'm doing a lot more speaking and comedy. I'm trying to bring awareness any way people will listen. And I found out people weren't just listening to me, lecturing. So I thought, well, let's make fun of it. And people are now listening, and I'm dropping seeds, and I'm talking about coffee enemas, in my, in my comedy.
Those are always funny.
Oh my God, they're hilarious,
Yeah.
Renegade Health Boss everywhere. So all the social media, the website, email me, Heather at Renegade Health Boss.
So renegadehealthboss.com. Go there. I really like that. I like that better than your old website that you had.
Right?
Yes,
Me
it's
too.
nice. Nice.
Because then we can talk about everything health that's going to get everybody better instead of just focusing so much on Lyme, which there's still a huge Lyme component to it. Trust me, I'm never going to leave my Lymies behind. Like that's a huge part of my story, but also is autoimmune and mental health and addictions and toxins. And I want to be able to talk about it all.
Yeah. And tell us about bioenergetics. So you're into bioenergetics and you talk about that a lot. So tell us about that and that bioenergetics role in addressing trauma.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes I feel like it is one of the easy ways to kind of sneak in through the back door to help regulate the nervous system. Because like you said, a lot of times people don't even realize how dysregulated they are. And so to take those steps to get regulated can seem kind of daunting and confusing. And so bioenergetics, right? We are bioenergetic machines. We are electricity. We can measure, our magnetic field from our heart with an EKG. We can measure the brain with an EEG. And if these two things aren't talking to each other symbiotically, things are going to be disrupted. So a lot of times, if a person's bioenergetic field is off, the supplements they're taking aren't going to have the right kind of effect. It's going to affect their sleep. It's going to affect a lot of those foundational things. And so that's what I love about bioenergetics, especially around the mental emotional. And most bioenergetics machines out there, whether it's Ness or Zyto or AO or, you fill in the blank, most of them have a mental emotion component to it because they realize, right, how important that is to the nervous system, to healing. And it sometimes can be just that gentle way of tipping the scales enough to where somebody then can be healthy enough to kind of then start doing these other things. Because sometimes people, especially like with mast cell stuff, they're just so triggered by everything. They can't eat anything, So it's really great at just kind of getting in there gently, calming things down. So then that way you can start building up again.
Yeah. And that's why they work so well, is because they're working on part of the reason they're working on that emotional trauma component.
Well, it cracks me up because when we went from Western med to functional med, woohoo, awesome. Functional med's like, we get to the root cause. But like we said earlier, not really necessarily. I'm finding there's a next step below, and that's the bioenergetics. And I really feel like that and the mental emotional components are kind of more the root cause. And that's really the ground level that people should be focusing on for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, we put thousands of people through Nest Health, which is a bioenergetic program. And yes, it gets your body working so much better, especially if you've tried a lot of different things and you can't take supplements or you can't eat a lot of foods or you react to everything or you have chemical sensitivities or EMF sensitivity or you just can't function. what do you do? So bioenergetics is the answer to that, to get you that foundational relief and get your body functioning again, just at a normal baseline level, so you can do the things you need to do to get better.
Absolutely.
Yes. So tell us your website again.
renegadehealthboss.com.
Okay, fantastic. And so everyone, go check out Heather's work. You have a podcast too, correct?
I do. Renegade Health Boss.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Yeah. So go check out her work, her social media. And so everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. And just thanks for tuning in every week. I love bringing experts from around the world to help give you those missing pieces, those last pieces of the puzzle that you need. Hopefully you have some light bulb moments on this podcast, because I want you to live your best life, to be healthy, because you deserve to feel good. And so that's why I'm doing this show. Thanks so much for tuning in.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.